Welcome to the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region Incorporated Diversity and Disability YouTube channel. Your Life, Your Voice program, where self-advocates and professionals in the disability sector are interviewed.
The Diversity and Disability Project would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and live and recognise their continued connection to land, water and community. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging.
Nothing about us without us. We pay respect to all self-advocates who have worked hard over the years and still working tirelessly for their rights, supporting others with disabilities and human rights for all.
This channel is for people with disabilities who aspire to seek self-advocacy role models to inspire change in their everyday lives. Nothing about us without us. Choice and control are central themes. Every interview is as unique as you and I.
And it has our fundamental universal human rights ethos of respect for persons with disabilities, having their views heard and acknowledged. After all, it's all in the name. Your life, your voice.
Be the voice of change in your life.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Your Life, Your Voice. My name is Julie Skiberis and I'd like to welcome my co-host, Larissa McFarland. Hi Larissa, how are you doing?
Hi Julie, great to be here.
Great, and this is our last episode for Series 3, 2022. So we're having a bit of a celebration today. I'd like to welcome Nadia and Soizic from WDV. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everybody, and hi, Lara, as well. Larissa, sorry, my name is Nadia, and I'm the CEO of Women with Disabilities Victoria. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm joining this event from the lands of the Wurundjeri people.
Hi, Julie. Hi, Larissa. Hi, everyone. My name is Soizic Brohan, and I am the Gender and Disability Workforce Development Program Manager at WDV, Women with Disabilities Victoria. My pronouns are she, her, and today I am joining from Wurundjeri country.
Wonderful. Welcome to all our powerful ladies today. So, Larissa, would you like to start off with questions, please?
Thank you, Julie. Yes, great to be here. I'm on the lands of the Bunurong people today. And I'll start with Nadia. Nadia, can you just tell me a bit about your role at WDV, Women with Disabilities Victoria?
Yep, no worries. So as of December, last year, gosh, it only seems like yesterday. So 2021, I was appointed the Chief Executive Officer of Women with Disabilities Victoria. Basically, my role is to ensure that Women with Disabilities Victoria, or WDV, I'll refer to us from now on, remains active in the women's health services sector, in the prevention of violence sector, in the response to family violence sector, as well as supporting women and with disabilities to learn about empowerment, leadership, developing their leadership skills, their advocacy skills. So a little bit of community development as well is basically all of what we do.
Thanks. And Soizic, what's your role?
So my role is a program manager for a primary prevention program called the Gender and Disability Workforce Development Program. So I started in this role a little bit more than a year ago now. I started in November 2021, but previously I was working at WDV as a project officer on a different project. And yes, a year ago, I was promoted a program manager for this primary prevention program.
Great. This is for you, Nadia. What can you tell us about the purpose and the objective? I mean, you sort of pretty much have told us the purpose and objectives of Women with Disabilities. Thank you. Maybe a bit more about when it started, maybe a bit about its history.
Sure. And I'm happy to go a little bit more into, I guess, our formal purpose and our objectives, if you want me to, Larissa.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'll start off with a little bit of history. So in 1995, a network of women came together, and they were made up of members or women who sought to empower and support women with disabilities in Victoria to achieve their rights in the disability movement, the women's movement, and society in general. And this was done, the women who got together felt that we needed to provide communication, information sharing, network, advocacy, peer support, and education. So they got together, they formed what was then known as the Victorian Women with Disabilities Network. And that existed really until a very important date in our history, 19 August 2010, where Women with Disabilities Victoria was born. I wasn't around when that happened. I was aware of Women with Disabilities Victoria within the other roles that I've had in my work, but I hear that it was a great day for many, many women who'd worked tirelessly to get to this stage. So Women with Disabilities Victoria is a non-profit disabled people's organisation, or DPO, representing women with disabilities in Victoria. We are run by and for women and non-binary people with all kinds of disabilities. Our members are people of all ages, backgrounds, and lifestyles. Women with disabilities Victoria women with disabilities are often treated unfairly because of our gender and or our disability. At WDV, we advocate for our rights to safety and respect with a focus on health services, violence prevention, and leadership. So we support women with disabilities to achieve their leadership and advocacy goals. We create resources to help women with disabilities to learn and speak out about their rights. We work collaboratively together with other disability sectors, family violence prevention services, and other community organisations to improve gender and disability. Inclusion. We research issues that impact on women with disabilities, and we campaign on items that impact our community, challenging harmful attitudes about gender and disability. We also advocate for change to laws and policies to improve the lives of women with disabilities. And we provide expert advice to government.
So this is a question for Soizic. So can you tell us about the purpose and objectives of the Gender and Disability Workforce Development Program, and when did the program begin?
Absolutely, Julie. So I will start by saying that the program started way before my time at WDV, because the program has been around since 2014. So for 8 years already. So as I said previously, this is a primary prevention program. So what it means is that the purpose of the program is to prevent violence against women with disabilities before violence occurs. And more specifically, the program targets the causes of violence, also known as the drivers of violence, in order to transform them. So our audience is quite broad because the program targets sectors and workforces that have a role to play in preventing violence against women with disabilities. We target, for example, disability and social services, because quite often those sectors don't have a lot of violence prevention knowledge and skills. But we also target violence prevention and response organizations, because for this target audience, sometimes they don't have a lot of disability inclusion knowledge and skills. But we also target other sectors, such as women's health services, state agencies, local councils, the justice and the education sectors, and so on. So as you can see, Julie, our audience is really, really broad.
And
So I just would like, oh, sorry, Julie.
sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah.
So also, and I know it's not technically in the questions, but you guys do a lot of lived experience. So lots of grassroots type of people come into the organisation as with lived experience. Would you like to comment and think about any comments about that at all?
Yes, absolutely. Lived experience is really a core value for WDV, and it is reflected in all our program activities. So let me provide you with a couple of examples. Just when we start with the recruitment for the program staff and for the program casuals, we really recruit women with a lived experience of disabilities. And today we have 5 program staff, we have 12 casuals, and almost all of us identify as having a disability. So as part of this program, we have a group of experts by experience, and that group is made up of 12 women with a lived experience of disability. And what they do is that they provide internal consultations to WDV, but also external consultations to external organizations. And they can be consulted on a number of materials. It can be a program, a policy, a resource, and so on. And we also, every year, we train some of the experts as trainers, so they can co-facilitate awareness raising sessions on violence against women with disabilities.
Yeah, I think the work that you guys do on the ground, combining grassroots with civic issues, and then feeding that information to organisations is really, really great work that you guys do. So congratulations to WDV.
Thank you.
So
I feel like we should disclose at this point that that both Julie and I are not only members of WD, but we have also we currently do work on a very part-time basis with WDV as experts.
That's right.
Yeah, and I've actually been a member longer than all of you, I think. So Nadia, can you tell me about how Women with Disabilities, or WDV, is funded?
Yes. So the challenge for WDV initially, I'll start off with the not so good bit, but it's okay, is that we don't get concurrent funding, meaning that we don't get a lot of long-term funding. Most of our funding comes from state and federal government, specifically relating to programs. So we have a community inclusion and women's empowerment program funding that we receive from federal government. We have a gender and disability program funding, which we receive from state government. We have experts in our health access to health services funding, which we receive from federal government. And we have some concurrent funding that comes to support our senior policy officer. So the work we do in the prevention of violence response space. We also have some smaller amounts of funding that we've been fortunate enough to receive from various state government departments relating to health and women's health and capacity building. But they are all timeline related funding mostly. We also received some very small amounts of funding from some philanthropic organisations. And then we also, I guess, create our own source of funding, often by offering our expert advice, both through our experts by experience workers as well as by our staff members when we get paid for particular consultation work that we might do with whether it's a community organisation, local government, a health service, state government, and those kind of bodies. But as I said, mostly we get money from that is non-continuous funding.
Thanks. So that must, I guess I should just point out at this point that a lot of the work that you do then does involve trying to get more funding to keep going. Yep. And that's such a sad state, really, that we can't, it takes us away from doing the work that is important to have to be always trying to get funding for projects.
We're actually doing sorry to jump in, Larissa. We're actually doing quite a big piece of work at the moment in developing some strategies to get government support for ongoing funding. We've employed a person to do quite an amount of work in that space so we can actually make budget submissions to both state and federal budget for more ongoing funding. So fingers crossed, everybody.
Yeah, this is a common state of affairs for all disability-led programs. So it's a shame because, like Larissa so well articulated, it takes away from the work that we do on the ground. So we've got we've got an ongoing state government now. So if they're listening to our little channel, if we can make a plea for this is my 30-second grant, guys, fund us and do great work on the ground. And
we will be in touch, Julie. Let them know.
I like to make the channel a bit interactive at times. So I apologise for if I throw people off. Anyway, Have we asked how is the program funded from Soizic's perspective? I've lost track. Have I asked that question, Soizic?
Julie, I can say a couple of words about how the program is funded.
Yep.
So the Gender and Disability Workforce Development Program, as Nadia mentioned, is one of the programs at WDV that receives government funding. So currently we are funded by GFFH, which is the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, and more specifically by the Office for Violence Prevention and Coordination. So we are currently in stage 5 of funding, but as Nadia mentioned previously, we have to keep advocating for getting refunded all the time. So as of today, our program is funded until June 2023, and we really hope we can get refunded in future and that we can get ongoing funding. And on top of that, the program also has some income from the consultation that the experts are providing to external organizations, because we really want the experts to be paid for the time and expertise. So we charge organizations when they want to consult the expert by experience. And we also generate some income because the program also provides some training activities. So we have 2 different kinds of training. We have what we call our scheduled training. It is a training that runs twice or 3 times a year. Any professional can register for the training, and the training has a cost. And we also provide what we call tailored training when organizations reach out to us to be trained around violence prevention for women with disabilities. And we also charge this kind of training.
Okay, wonderful. So would you like me to ask the next question, Larissa?
Go for it.
Yep. So do you think that WDV is progressive in what ways? I suppose this question is for Nadia.
Well, I'll start the conversation. Firstly, I just want to point out, and this isn't really progressive, but it just is what it is. We are the only Victorian-specific women's health service with a specific, I guess, focus on raising the barriers that women with disabilities face in many aspects of life. I feel as an employer, we are very inclusive of staff with disabilities, women with disabilities. We have just negotiated a new enterprise agreement with all our staff. Part of that agreement, and I think this is probably we're probably one of the first organisations in Victoria that I know of to have this particular leave, but we have instituted what we're calling disability leave, which is a number of days a year that people or that our staff who identify as having disability can apply for and get, that where they need to do something that is specifically relevant to their disability and would otherwise have to take either personal leave or annual leave. And an example of that could be, for me, for example, I'm a blind person and I have a seeing eye dog. A little while ago, my dog became quite sick, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. She became quite unwell and I needed to attend vet appointments. She was hospitalised, and unknowing to me, the vet said she may have, they were expecting her not to make it through. Fortunately, she did, but just attending those appointments normally would have meant that I would need to take personal leave or annual leave to do that. Because my seeing eye dog is basically, and I'll block her ears, an aid that I use as to get around. It's my, she's my mobility aid. Secondary, she's a dog first, of course, and my best friend. But I could, if our enterprise agreement was agreed to at that time, I would have been able to apply for disability leave, which meant I didn't have to eat into my personal leave or my annual leave. And I think that's a really good aspect of our enterprise agreement. The second thing that we've done, I think, in our agreement is to introduce family violence leave, which is where people who might be experiencing some form of violence or being caring for someone who has can apply for specific leave related to that experience. And I think those are two really good initiatives, and I feel that does make us quite progressive. I guess the final thing that I want to say is that women with disabilities is disability-led. We require that our CEO be a person who identifies with disability as having a disability. So therefore, I think that's also pretty progressive.
Yes, I agree with you. There are not enough, in my opinion, and lots of people's opinions, I think, not enough disability-led disabled organisations around. Most of them tend to be led by non-disabled people. So it shouldn't be rare, but it is. And it shouldn't be progressive, but it is.
I agree with you, Larissa. And, nothing about us without us. That phrase comes to my mind. The best people to speak about disability are, in fact, the people who are living the dream or the life or whatever you want to call it. I always find it fascinating when people speak about disability and they don't identify as having a disability. I don't know, I find that a bit challenging, but it is what it is. And we will continue to be, if we want to term the word progressive, for a very long time to come in that space, I suspect.
Yeah.
Go on, Larissa. Sorry.
It's okay. I think I lost my thought. I was just going to say that I think, whilst it's sadly still progressive today to be disability-led, from my understanding, WDV has been disability-led since the beginning. Even the network started that way. That is also still, you know, that's a really important legacy that you bring to women and non-binary people across Australia, across Victoria.
We should be very proud of that, I think, as an organisation and as a group of people.
Yeah. Julie, before I ask the next question, did you want to say something?
Yeah, first of all, I apologise for my interruptions. I think that the word progressive is really, really interesting, and I'm pretty sure I've seen in the HR in other organisations that don't necessarily aren't disability led organisations, that there seems to be a lot more greater leave access for pet leave if your pets are ill. And I think there's a lot of invisibility among in the community with disability for whatever reasons. Could be shame or people suffering with depression, and in this really consumer environment that we lead, people are more isolated because a lot of people, there's a greater amount of people living alone now. So I think that there's a greater awareness, and I think that having organisations at WDV who promote, these sort of initiatives opens the door for other organisations to look at these things and look at these things in respect to the employee and their mental health conditions. And now that we have a lot of areas of work, a lot of areas have less staff, so their staff are deficient. Anything that we can do to encourage mental health awareness and better mental health is actually a good thing. And it like a lot of things that WDV do, we open the door for other sectors to look at things and how they impact staff and the positive impacts that we have on the wider society.
Julie, if I can just jump in there, absolutely agree with you 1000%. Last week I spoke at an event for White Ribbon Day run by the City of Greater Dandenong, and one of the things I challenged them to was to negotiate for their employees who identify as living with disability or having disability, to implement something like disability leave, to recognise the extra additional leave that some people might need that directly relates to their disability. I have no idea whether they'll take it up, but if anyone's listening from the City of Greater Dandenong, I'm reiterating it again. And there are local governments. So, it'd be really good to see local governments and other big organisations thinking about this and becoming more inclusive. If I was somebody that was applying for a job at the City of Greater Dandenong, for instance, let's use them as an example, and they said, and I was reading their recruitment, and they said, we have disability leave, I would feel myself that at least they understand the additional leave requirements that some people might have that directly relates to their disability. So we'll see where that goes. But it's small steps, Julie, small steps.
Thank you. And I'll hand over back to Larissa. Thank you, Larissa, for giving me that space.
Sure. I just want to say I feel like I should make that my motto when I wake up every morning: baby steps. Not just in my life, but just generally the changes that we want to make. It's so easy to get overwhelmed at the slow progress. And yeah, remembering to make baby steps. Returning to the question of disability-led, Soizic, do you have any more comments around disability-led organisations or how WDV works as a disability-led org?
Absolutely. First, I apologize for the background noise, but it seems that our neighbors, our watch, are having some renovation in the office next to us. So I will give it a try. No, Larissa, maybe I would just like to really emphasize that lived experience is really at the core of everything WDV and the program is doing. I already talked a little bit about our recruitment practices. We actively recruit women with disabilities. I talked about our fantastic group of experts by experience. And the expert by experience, their role is not limited to the group because, for example, we invite some experts to take part of our governance meetings as part of the program. We have a PAG, a program advisory group for the program, and 2 experts by experience are members of the PAG. So it's really fantastic for us to benefit from the expertise as women with disabilities. I also would like to emphasize that even when we deliver training at WDV and as part of the program, we always have one woman with a disability at least who co-facilitates training, because the most positive feedback we get from training participants is that they can really build on that lived experience expertise we provide as part of the training. And even before we deliver the training, all our training materials, we consult with women with disabilities, for example, to make sure that we are inclusive of women with disabilities. And maybe last but not least, whenever we develop resources, because as part of the program, we also develop a number of resources on violence prevention against women with disabilities. We often have consultations with the experts so they can inform the resources with our lived expertise. And we have a number of resources. We have some resources that are really informational. For example, our disability guide and our disability video, in which we really explain how we want people to understand disability. And as part of those resources, we developed 6 keystones that were discussed with the experts by experience and that inform the resources we produce. We also have other resources that are more capacity building resources. For example, we have an online module that everyone can complete online at their own pace. And the content of the modules is also informed by the lived experience of women with disabilities. So yes, to sum up, I really want to emphasize that lived experience is really at the heart of everything we do at WDV and as part of the program.
So Nadia, I'll just see if I can rephrase the question so it fits. So, in the violence prevention space, is it unusual to have people with disability or staff with people with disability, in your opinion, or do you have any thoughts about that?
So, as Soizic has said, we absolutely value the expertise, the lived expertise that our staff members bring to the organisation and our members generally bring to the organisation. So I really do believe that it is important that that lived experience for those who are able to, I guess, tell their stories and talk about those experiences is really important to have when we're doing work in the violence prevention space. We could sit as an organisation and say, women with disabilities are twice as likely to experience violence, all of those statistics that many of us know like the back of our hand. But to actually have people who are willing to share their stories is invaluable. As Soizic said, I know a lot of the feedback we get from the programs that are run, it is really good to hear the lived experience, and for us that really gives us, you know, better knowledge about what it is like, about you know, what organisations, the external organisations that are giving us this feedback, what they need to do, what expertise they need to have. And in fact, many organisations are then looking at the experts by experience model and as a way of co-designing their own projects that relate to you know, prevention of violence, which I think, you know, is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've led the way for other violence prevention organisations to use that lived experience. Yeah.
Yeah. If I can also say, and it's a little bit outside of your question, Julie, but also just to let those interested listening know that also our board members are made up of women with disabilities. So every board member who is elected to the board of women with disabilities must identify as having disability. We are able to co-opt 2 people who don't necessarily have disabilities, but it means that a majority of our board are women with disabilities. So we are truly a disability-led organisation in all aspects of what we do.
I mean,
I don't know. I understand. I know that a lot of the staff are women and non-binary people with with disability, but not all, are they? It's not like a prerequisite that to work.
Not all. Not really. Some jobs some positions for instance, our experts by experience roles, we would not have somebody who didn't have lived experience or who wasn't comfortable with, you know, identifying that they have that they're living with disability for those roles, because clearly that's important. With other staff, we give preference to, and we, in our PD's position descriptions, we say we encourage women with disabilities to apply. We make the process as accessible as possible. So it's not about what your needs are when we interview somebody, it's about what can we do as an organisation to make sure that the process is accessible to you, from the application stage to the interview stage to then onboarding and actually working with us. So it's all about what we can do. It's not about what do you need as an employee. We want to know what we can do, and that we hope makes it less onerous for a prospective employee to feel like, oh, I have to explain everything. Whereas if we're saying, you know, what can we do, then it's about, okay, so you need to, as an organisation, make sure that I have, you know, appropriate technology, a bigger screen maybe, you know, even so far as an automated door on our toilets, so that people don't need to push what is normally a very heavy door to get in there. Those are the kind of things that we really think are important, because it's about true inclusion.
Thank you. So moving on, WDV is a membership-based organisation, I understand. So who can become a member and why would they become a member? And yeah, tell us about the membership.
So we have a couple of categories for membership. We have full members who are women and non-binary people with disabilities in Victoria. That membership is free. And we are doing, we've just currently re-recruited some comm staff. So we're planning to do a lot of work around what do you get as a member of WDV and as a full member of WDV. So just watch this space. Then we have associate members, which is open to individuals or organisations supportive of the aims of Women with Disabilities Victoria. And there's a cost for those memberships. At the moment, we have over 800 individual members. That's grown quite significantly probably in the last year and a half. But we look forward to obviously growing that membership even more.
Can I ask a question from left field? And
Yes.
if you can't answer it, it's fine. What about men? Can men join WDV? I know it's a bit of a strange question.
So people who identify as men obviously would not be able to join as full members. However, they can be an individual associate member, which means they support the values and what we are achieving to do. Does that answer your question?
It does, because sometimes amongst able-bodied people, the work that I do is a bit challenging for them because, you know, as we all know, not all men are violent. There's also same-sex violence, the whole range of violence. And so I'm trying to explain to them, you know, yeah, that's, you know, we do understand that at WDV. So, and you know, a feminist is a philosophy, you know, so it's not based on, you know, your gender or your body parts. It's a philosophy. And so I try to explain it from that perspective. Yeah, but it becomes quite an intense conversation at times. Yeah, so
It is.
Go on.
It is tricky, Julie, and we're actually just doing, and I know there are some questions around gender diversity coming up, so I won't go too much into that, but till we get the questions. But it is a really not a tricky space, but it can be quite an interesting space to work in, and you know, the bottom line is, I guess, and this is what I try and tell people, there is a discrepancy and there is a prevalence, I guess, of women with disabilities who, you know, there is a greater experience of violence in some way, shape or form. The statistics do show that. We were born from a group of women who got together and said, this is a space that has been neglected for a very long time, and we need to do some work around that. We also are growing, you know, developing in our understanding of gender diversity and to be inclusive of other of genders. So there is a lot of work that we're beginning to do in that space too, but I'm happy to talk about that later.
Well, I can ask you right now, how does WDV define women? And has this changed recently?
So at the moment, we are doing a big piece of work around that exact question, Larissa. And it's not just about waking up one morning and saying, hey, we're going to be gender inclusive, because whilst we can say in all our promo, we are gender inclusive, we value gender diversity, we believe in all of this stuff, unless you actually have the processes in place and the understanding and bring everybody, whether it be our staff, our directors, our members along, it's just words, isn't it? So
Yes.
we need to really do some I guess, deep thinking around that process and how we implement a plan for WDV to be more gender diverse and to bring that to start working more in the gender diverse space, but also to not forget where we came from. And there's nothing wrong with saying women with disabilities. That's not a thing that we're trying to discard in terms of our history and in terms of what we're actually, what we focus on for a lot of our work. But we can also then bring into that discussion, women with disabilities, but also non-binary people with disabilities who might be experiencing violence or who want to participate in our leadership programs or be a member of our leadership hubs, those kind of things. We actually have a person that we've employed to do this big piece of work, and this person was responsible for working with Women's Health in the West to, I guess, develop their plan about how they have begun to work more effectively in this area and be more inclusive. We're about to go to the board with a paper, and there is a plan, which will take a little bit of time, but we want to do it right.
That's yeah, I'm really heartened to hear that, because you are so right that these are big, for many people, really big conceptual shifts, because, we grow, the patriarchy which reinforces the binary of gender is incredibly strong, and it's what many of us have grown up with. So it can be really hard to shift that thinking, and imposing it upon people and saying, right, now we're going to include all these other genders, marginalized genders, can create confusion. And so I think it is really important that the conversations are open and considered and, ongoing. So thank you.
All right. And we actually have consulted with, we've started the consultation process. We've consulted with our staff, we've consulted with our experts as well. And eventually we will also, once we have a defined planned directive from the board, we will start the process with our members to make sure that everybody is understanding of where we think we need to be.
Yeah. Yes, because, together we're stronger.
Oh, yeah.
And if I can just add up to the gender language we use as part of the Gender and Disability Workforce Development Program, because I think it is the same problematic. Basically, what we do as part of the program is that we use a framework called Change the Story, which is a primary prevention framework in Australia. And what we do is that we acknowledge that some women can perpetrate violence and men can also be victims of violence. But as Nadia said, women experience significantly higher rates of violence compared to men. In particular, women with disabilities experience higher rates of violence. So this is why when we deliver training, for example, we use a gendered language. We continue using the terms women and men, but we also acknowledge that we can have a broad range of different situations.
Can I just make a comment on what Nadia and Larissa were chatting about? In that women with disability, even though we make up as women, at least 50% of the population, and then and then women with disabilities, I'm not sure the percentage there, but it's pretty high because of violence-based issues. We're still considered a subset of society, I suppose. And so we have our individual type of experiences that others would not identify or would not recognise. And I'm just leading into the non-binary, the non-binary subsection of society. They would have exactly the same type of challenges. We can't. I often say, I don't know what it's like to be autistic or in a wheelchair because I haven't lived it. But then so we need to look at like subsections and have like look at them and look at their experiences as they're quite different, or maybe different or some same as other minority groups, like with disabilities. Did that make any sense at all?
Julie, it does. And I absolutely agree with you. I feel that we do need to be inclusive of, as all, I guess, the different or the groups, not groups, everybody that experiences violence who, from our remit, are either women with disabilities or non-binary people with disabilities, to be inclusive and gender diverse. We need to do it in the right way and in a way that is inclusive and embracing, and where people feel that they are in a safe place to talk about their stories. And I think we do the women with disabilities work really well. I think we are learning, in the new gender diverse space, and to be inclusive of other genders, and this is why this work that we're doing is so vital, to make sure that we can truly be supportive and inclusive.
How about we move on? We've got about 10 minutes.
Well, Julie, would you like to ask the question number 12?
Yeah, because I figured out we covered the others. How is the WDV breaking down the ableist stereotypes within society, and what effect has this had on assisting people with a disability to participate in meaningful work, for example? And this goes to Nadia.
So from a general perspective, I guess, the language that we use, we try very much to use non-ableist language. We practice, really what we preach in terms of inclusion, empowerment. We don't talk about, we try and talk about the experiences of our members, and our, when we tell the stories of our members, we do that in a way that doesn't make it seem like people, it's okay to experience violence, or words like, I guess, empowerment we use a lot of, where we say we offer people strategies to become more empowered. We don't empower people as such. We provide our members and women with disabilities the tools to learn about empowerment, so that in the end, it's up to that individual, to use the tools that we teach, and that we provide, to become more empowered. And so I think from an organisational perspective, where we certainly try not to be ableist in what we do, in our language, in how we write things, And I'll let Soizic talk a little bit more about, I guess, from the program perspective.
Thank you, Nadia. I would love to. Maybe I would just like to add that as part of the program, we use another framework called Changing the Landscape. And this is a national framework to prevent violence against women with disabilities. And that framework is really at the core of our work, because what it does is that it identifies the drivers of violence for women with disabilities. And the framework really emphasizes that women with disabilities are discriminated against both as women, but also because they have a disability. So the framework unpacks a number of drivers, but Julie, you were asking about meaningful work opportunities. And this one is really important for me because, well, I identify as a woman with a disability because I am hard of hearing. And I also identify as a migrant woman because I wasn't born in Australia, I am French. And when I moved to Australia in 2017, it was extremely challenging for me to find a paid job. And I wasn't expecting that at all because back in France, I studied, I have a PhD. I had previous work experience in NGOs in France and overseas. But when I moved to Australia, it took me a year and a half to secure a paid job. And my first paid job in Australia was actually at WDV. But a major barrier for me was the interviews, because employers would look at my resume, they would ask me to have an interview with them. But when they had that face-to-face interview with me, they would be surprised by the way I speak. And apart from WDV, nobody offered me a paid job. So the framework Changing the Landscape also unpacks what they call the essential actions. So basically it means what we need to change to address the drivers of violence against women with disabilities. And I really like the example that Nadia mentioned earlier, the example around disability leave. Because when you state that you offer this kind of leave alongside the violence leave, it really shows that as an employer, you're inclusive of women with disabilities. So this is really the kind of very practical actions every employer can take to be more inclusive of women with disabilities. And maybe the last thing I would like to emphasize about the framework, Changing the Landscape, is that they also offer a number of prevention principles. And those principles, basically, they refer to the way we should be implementing the essential actions. And one principle I particularly like is the first one, which is to center the input of women and girls with disabilities. And I think it's something that we do really well at WDV, especially through our teams of experts with lived experience, because we really want external organizations to understand that the experts have to be paid for the time and expertise. And I think that WDV as an organization recruiting women with disabilities is also an organization that really emphasizes the importance of the employment of women with disabilities, not just employing women with disabilities, but also offering promotion opportunities, because paid employment is really key to independence and agency for women with disabilities.
Can I just make a comment or ask? I think I've seen this in emails through WDV. Does WDV have a youth arm for women with disabilities?
We do, Julie. So we do a little bit of work in the youth space. We have in our Community Inclusion and Women's Empowerment Program, we have a specific person who works with younger people. We have youth leadership programs that we offer. We also have a youth experts by experience group, similar to the G&D experts by experience group, who support the work that we do and offer advice and their direct lived experience to ensure that the work we do in conjunction with the experts, the youth experts, is truly inclusive and is not just what we think is a good idea.
Well, one thing I'm totally against is tokenism employment, really quite against that as one of my principles, and because it's sort of like minimises. Well, it slightly puts people in a box, as we know. And so I really am for employment opportunities that truly reflect people's capabilities, and to reach their goals, whatever their goals may be.
I agree with you, Julie. And as Soizic said, we absolutely value the expertise of our staff that are contracted staff, but that is in no less diminished with the value that with our valuing of our experts, because it's without our experts, we can, say whatever we want, but we don't have the evidence, we don't have the direct experience. From another perspective, some of our experts that come on as, as working with WDV for set periods, whether it be 2 or 3 hours a week or 2 weeks, sometimes they also feel that their expertise can be used as other staff members as well. So we've had a lot of instances where our experts have actually applied for other positions within WDV and have had longer term employment. It doesn't make any less valuable what the experts do, but it actually gives those people opportunities to feel that they can work more or work in a different space or work longer hours if they choose to.
Yeah, sorry, I think I might have been unclear. I was speaking about the broader employment market, but WDV definitely supports people in their roles, and really values experience and really encourages development, further professional development and working in the space. So I think
tokenism is not a word that we use like that. I agree with you, Julie. It's not. We don't even, it's not a word that we're familiar with at all, apart from encouraging other organisations not to be tokenistic.
That's what that was my comment. So that's what my comment was related to. So I think we're at the end of our program, guys. What a wonderful end to our 2022 season 3. So I'd like to thank everyone on the panel today, and looking forward to another season next year. So from all of us, from our YouTube channel, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Catch us on Your Life, Your Voice YouTube channel, live every Monday fortnight or on demand.
We would like your comments and suggestions on topics that you would like us to explore. Leave your comments on YouTube comments section.
Please feel free to email us on dndyourlifeyourvoice@gmail.com or contact us via the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Inc. Phone number 1300 676 044. 1300 676 044.
Diversity and Disability is a project of the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Incorporated, and would like to thank the management for funding this project, especially moving through the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has been difficult for people with disabilities living in isolation.